Well, my nightmare, I guess you'd call it, began on May 31st, 1985, when my wife was found brutally murdered in as pretty bad a horrendous fashion as you could imagine. None of the evidence pointed to me, so they didn't arrest me for 8 months after my wife got murdered. About a year and a half after I got arrested was when I went to trial. They found me guilty of capital murder and sentenced me to a death sentence. I was a condemned individual. You don't have hope on death row because that'll kill you. I can't count the number of guys that get their hopes up and have somebody jerk the rug right out from under them. It's just a killer. You can't do it.
You sit in front of the bulletproof glass, you know, in little chairs with all the other people, and he finally came shuffling in, had handcuffs on, leg irons, you know, and when he walked in that door, I mean, I'll never forget, just the reality hit me that, you know, I may never see him outside of this prison again.
It made me realize how important things that you take for granted are, like your family, your friends, you know, breathing free air. It made me realize a lot of things that everybody takes for granted. And so I'm a much better person for having spent 5 years on Oklahoma's death row. Nowadays, at least these guys can have hope. Like I said, on death row, I don't believe in hope much, because I've seen what it does to people. But if you're not doing a death sentence, if you're not a condemned man, I think you do have hope, and you got to reach out for what you can. And now these innocence projects have given people a real valid reason to believe that they might, at some opportunity in their career as a penitentiary person, they'll get out. So, you know, I mean, I believe in that kind of hope when it's realistic. And I think that the Innocence Project provides such a thing.
The Oklahoma Innocence Project is an organization that investigates and litigates cases of actual innocence. And we do this on any case that could potentially be a wrongful conviction.
The people that are in these positions are normally very, very poor, very uneducated. They don't have the means, they don't have the resources to do anything about the position they're in.
A lot of times my guys have been in, on average, 7 to 10 to 15 years. And at this point, there are no appeals left for them. They don't quite understand what's going on in the system, and no one has listened to them. There's no one for them to actually turn to.
Working for the Innocence Project, I get a lot of questions. You know, friends, family members will ask me, well, isn't it true that everyone in prison is innocent? And I think it's important to note that while that cliche is certainly there are a few people who are actually innocent. They've been wrongfully convicted, and they just need someone to help them, and that's why we're here.
Although it's rare for federal habeas relief to be warranted, if there is even one person who's incarcerated who is actually innocent, then it's worth all of our diligent efforts to make sure that justice is ultimately served.
We don't know if these are innocence cases until we investigate them. And even when we investigate them, they may still be a valid conviction. Most of the time, the system works. But when it doesn't, it fails on a massive level.
The Innocence Clinic and the Innocence Project is about freeing people who have been wrongfully convicted, but by proxy, it's also about righting the entire wrong, and sometimes the product of that includes finding the real perpetrator so that not only the person who's in prison can have relief, but the victim and their family can too, and we can prevent other tragedies from happening by putting away the real perpetrator.
The clinic meets 2 days a week for about 2.5 hours, and that's the classroom component where I teach them how to go about the work that they do on the cases, how to review the information that they've originally received, what does it mean, and how do they develop it? How do you learn to get the records from the various agencies? What do you need to do?
I actually left from the first one that I did with a passion, a desire to get out and work even harder, because I got to leave. He didn't get to leave. And so for me, I wanted to leave and make sure that someday they get to walk out of that prison free men.
On average, our cases take 6 years from the time I get a letter to the time usually a person is exonerated. And there's a lot of costs built into that. It has been charted that it can cost up to $100,000 just in fees, not even like attorney fees, just in expenses, investigation, forensic testing, and all the support necessary to get an exoneration. It is not an inexpensive thing. And so having it in a clinic allows us to cut down on a lot of expenses and allows us to do more with less, but we still have those expenses that we are going to have to incur to exonerate someone.
Private donations are essential because no scholarship dollars or tuition dollars support this project. This is an entirely dependent on the generosity of our donors and supporters.
Our Innocence Clinic is just getting started, but the fact that we've had so much response financially and with just general support from the community and from the citizens of the state, it tells me that all people care about this. It's the right thing.
Support programs like this to help people that weren't lucky enough to have a great attorney or whatever their situation is. If they've got their story that needs to get out, then this is the kind of project that can help them do that.
The first thing I would say is thank you, because you are doing more to change a person's life than you could possibly know. These are people who have been wrongfully convicted. They're innocent and they're in prison. And what you're doing is restoring hope in the system, restoring hope in our legal system. And that is a bedrock principle of this country. And I would say you are doing a tremendous job in saving a person's life.